Hey there, friends. Well, I hope you're ready for some great Bible study today. We are going to be in the book of Genesis chapter 9, verses 1 through 29, and today we're going to talk about commands, covenants, and we're going to talk about blessings and cursings and a little history, and it's going to be great. We're going to find out why Noah cursed his son. We're going to find out what commands God gave that were different, what were the same to the people that were coming out of the ark. And we're entering into now the third generation, or the third dispensation of men, which is the generations of Noah. So I hope that you'll stay tuned, listen to the entire piece. This will set us up for what's coming in chapters 10 and 11. So enjoy today's study, and I'll see you inside the Bible Bistro. Hey there, friends. Are you ready today for some great Bible study here in the book of Genesis? I hope so, because this is going to be so much fun. There's so much here in Genesis chapter 9, and so much that still applies to us. So I hope you have your Bible. If you don't, grab it. And of course, I've got the outline right here on the screen beside me. So you can just take a look at that. And of course, we'll have this ready for you to download and when we publish this episode. So we're looking at Genesis chapter 9, verses 1 through 29, and now we've entered into what I'm calling the third dispensation, or the third era of men. Now, the first era was called the generations of creation. The second era was called the generations of Adam. And the third generation is being called the generation of Noah. So this is the third generation. We've passed through the flood, which was the final cataclysmic ending to the second generation of men. Now we come to the third. The flood is over. Men have exited the ark, and now we're into the third generation, which is the generations of Noah. And we're going to begin today looking at Noah and what happened with the covenant that was made, the commands that God gave, the curses that Noah placed on his son, and so forth. And then we're going to go in next week in chapter 10, and then in 11, we'll look at that some more, but we're going to see the cataclysmic event that ends the third age of man, which is the fall of the Tower of Babel. So let's go ahead and just jump right in here. We have Genesis chapter 9, verses 1 through 29, and you'll notice that I have here, and God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them. So here we have God's first speech to Noah and his sons. And also, you'll notice what we have here when he gives this speech to Noah and his sons. We have a command. There's a command that's going to be given here. Be fruitful and multiply. Where did we see that before? Be fruitful and multiply. Yeah, we've seen that one before, haven't we? And that I already have it here in the outline. Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. God told men and he told beasts of the field and all of creation to be fruitful and multiply. So Noah and all the beasts of the field are to replenish, that is, to refill the earth. So we have the same actually, language, but with a different intention. Not just to fill it, but now to refill it. The fear of you, the dread of you, shall be upon every beast of the earth, upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Okay, so now God gives us the command that he's going to give us food via the animals. Now you'll notice he says, every living thing shall be meat for you. As the green herb have I given you all things. If you go back to Genesis chapter 1, verses 29 and 30, and you find out that God gave food to men and to creation, and that was the herb of the field. Now, he says, you still have the herb of the field, but I'm going to give you also the creatures. So every living thing, all the fishes, all the fowl, upon every beast of the earth, the fear and the dread of you, into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that liveth is meat. Notice there's no restriction here. No restriction between clean and unclean. It's just everything is now available. Even as the green herb I have given you all things. So God provides for his people in this very first command. It's a blessing or it's a command to be blessed. Well, it's a command to fill the earth, replenish the earth, and multiply in the earth. Let me go ahead and center that. This is brand new. Command number 2, which is that they should have the animals for meat. So this is command number 1, be fruitful, multiply, refill it. Command number 2, the fear of you, the dread of you shall be upon them. I'm giving them to be meat for you. Okay? So he's adding to what he said there in Genesis chapter 1, verses 29 and 30. Verse 4, you look at verse 4 there, but flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall you not eat. And this sets the stage for what he's getting ready to say next, because the life of the blood is very important, or the blood is very important. You're not going to eat the life. You're not going to eat the blood. So that's restricted from men. Surely your blood of your lives will I require. So this opens up the door for us to think about not to eat the blood of animals. What about the blood of man? Well, he says, your blood will I require. You remember, and I have the passage right there in verse 8 of chapter 4, when Cain slew Abel. God came to him and said, the blood of your brother cries out to me. And you'll notice that we have, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Okay, so that reminds us of Genesis chapter 4. It reminds us of Cain's slaying of Abel. It reminds us that Abel's blood cried out. Those things are still in effect. God hates murder. God hates what happens here. And so he says, now, to protect you, I'm going to require that every beast that kills you, their life will be in jeopardy. And every man that kills you, their life will be in jeopardy. So he gives us this command as a protection. The blood of your lives will I require, of every beast I will require it, and at the hand of man and of every man's brother. Who's my brother? Every man is my brother, because I'm all of us, you, me, everybody. There's only one race of men. It doesn't matter the skin tone. That does not matter. We're all one genetic family, and we come from Adam through Noah. So it narrows down here with Noah, and Shem, Ham, and Japheth are the fathers of us all. We're all brothers. We're all sisters. We're all related in some fashion because we come from the same family. Your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Okay, so look here at verse 6. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. Right, here's the next command. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. And of course, this is a command that we understand, because today, what happens when someone murders a person? The life is in jeopardy of the person who takes a life, right? We have the death penalty. And so this is where that comes from. This is the jurisprudence of the death penalty. It comes all the way back here to the third generations of men. When God made this command, or gave this command to Noah, this was intended to help protect the life of men, because he didn't want to see what had been happening in that second dispensation, when everybody was out doing whatever they wanted. They were killing each other. Yeah, that wasn't what he wanted. And so he gives this command now. You kill someone, they're going to be killed. By man shall man's blood be shed. For in the image of God. So here is, again, we're going to go back to Genesis, aren't we? Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. We're going to remember the book of Genesis, again, the first chapter, because that's where it all started. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So God made them male and female. For in the image of God made he man. Again, let's highlight this, made he. Who's doing the work? Well, there's only one person doing the work here, right? And that is the Lord. So he said, I will require it. I will require it. So God is the one who's looking after this, and he's going to make sure that this takes place, that there is some sort of recompense. In the image of God made he man. So it is because we're image bearers, and if someone slays the image of God or slays an image bearer of God, God takes that personally. He says, I'm going to require the life because I made man. In the image of God made he man. And you be fruitful and multiply. Here's our language again, fruitful and multiply, just like we had up there in the first verse. Here in verse 7, we have similar language, be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply therein. So we go back to Genesis chapter 1 again with the command to be fruitful and multiply. I think it's one at verse 28. Yep. All right. And God spake to Noah and his sons, saying, all right, so we're going to put a divider here because we have something new. This is covenant. God is speaking to Noah. He says, I'm going to make a covenant between me and all life. All right. God spake unto Noah and his sons with him, saying, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. So God is making a covenant, and it is with everybody. So he says, with you, let's go ahead and mark these. So with you, your seed, every living creature, and then he describes that, fowl, cattle, beasts of the earth with you, all that go out of the ark, every beast of the earth. This is who the covenant is with. Okay? I will establish my covenant. So he's already mentioned covenant here. Notice that it's my covenant. Noah didn't think of this. God thought of this. God initiates this. God describes this. My covenant is with you. So again, we have covenant mentioned here. So we know who it's to. What's it about? Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there be any more flood to destroy the earth. So in this covenant, we have a promise. And the promise is right here in verse 11. I'm going to establish my covenant with you. And here it is. All flesh will no longer be cut off by waters of a flood. Okay. And God said, this is the token. Now you say, well, that's kind of funny language, token. What's that mean? A token is just a thing that stands for something yet to come. So you get a token whenever you put your coat in a coat rack where there's an attendant. They give you a token, and that token is for you to hold on to until you go back to get your coat, and you hand that token off, and you redeem it for your coat. Here's a token. God says this is going to represent what's going to happen. This sign, this physical thing, you're going to see it, and you're going to be reminded, and I'm going to be reminded of this promise that I've made, not to any more flood the earth. Okay? And this is the token of the covenant which I make between you and me and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. Notice that. Perpetual generations. So we know who the covenant is to. We know the promise of the covenant. We understand the token of the covenant and the length of time in which this token is going to be in existence for perpetual generations. So it's never going to come to a close until God closes out everything. I do set my bow in the cloud. So here is the token. It is the rainbow. It shall be a token for a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant. Again, notice the covenant is mentioned again. He said, this is the token. When you see it, it is going to be reminding me of my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature. Again, that's a repetition of what we had there in the first part of the covenant, which was who it's to. Here's the promise. Water shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud. And I will look upon it that I may remember. Again, notice, God is looking. He's remembering. What's he remembering? He's remembering the everlasting covenant. Remember? It's unto perpetual generation, so it's everlasting. It's not going to stop, between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. So he repeats that again here. So God's token is described, the length of time that the token is going to be in existence, what it's going to do. And the sons of Noah went forth. Now we're going to put a break right there, because we have ended all that God said to Noah. So he gives him these commands. He gives him this blessing. Right here at the very beginning, he blesses him. So God blessed Noah. Gives him these commands, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Gives him this covenant. We know who it's to. We know the promise of the covenant. We know the token of the covenant. We know what the covenant is going to do. Now we have a little history here. The exodus from the ark. Noah's sons and Noah all go out. And they're going to go forth, and they're going to do what? Well, they're going to be fruitful and multiply. But we need to know who our characters are. So Shem, Ham, and Japheth, these are the 3 sons of Noah. Notice, let's set this aside, Ham is the father of Canaan. Now, of course, this is important for the Jews, because they need to know who who's in the land when they get there. It's the Canaanites. These are the sons of Ham. We're going to find out that Ham wasn't a very savory character. He wasn't like his father in that he was righteous in his generation. The 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. Okay, we're a part of this. The whole earth was overspread. You and I are a part of that statement. That has happened. And it's happened because we're here. Look around you. There are people everywhere. Probably, maybe not. You may be in a part of the earth where there are very few people per square mile. You may be in a part of the earth where there's a multitude of people per square mile. But wherever you are, know this, that of these 3 sons of Noah, we have overspread the earth. And this is why it's happened, because God gave the command, be fruitful, multiply, replenish. And so we have. And so the whole earth is overspread. And Noah began to be an husbandman. Now we're going to talk about Noah and his work. Now on the backside of the ark, things are not quite as wonderful as they were on the front side of the ark. You remember that God found Noah to be a righteous man, perfect in his generation. Noah here begins to be a husbandman. You notice that here in verse 20. He planted a vineyard. Okay. Being a husbandman. Okay. Planting a vineyard. Okay. Drinking of the wine. Questionable. And drunkenness. Not good. So he goes from being a righteous man in all of his generation to being drunken after he gets out of the ark. And he was not only drunken, you'll notice that it says there in verse 21, he was uncovered in his tent. So his drunkenness led to his nakedness. And so this is why, ladies and gentlemen, alcohol is never a good idea. You tell me that you can control it. You cannot control it. It is a serpent that bites. It is like an adder that stings. You can't control when the adder is going to sting, and when it does, you are going to be out of control. And that's exactly what happens to Noah. So someone might ask the question, well, what happened to Noah being righteous in his generation, a perfect man before God? Well, he's still righteous, but remember, his righteousness is not because of Noah. His righteousness is because he found grace in the eyes of the Lord. His righteousness comes from grace. So he's still a righteous man, but he's made a very bad mistake. He drank of the wine, he became drunk, and he was naked within his tent. Now you might say, well, that's within his tent, but notice what happens. Ham is tempted. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brethren without. Now, that doesn't sound all that bad, right? It sounds rather innocent. But we find out later that Ham didn't just see his father's nakedness, he did something about it. Then we have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Well, let's just put here the sin of Ham. And Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it upon both their shoulders, went backward, covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah woke from his wine. Now we're going to see the curse. This is such a sad condition that happens here. Noah woke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. So Ham does something to him. What is it? Ham takes sexual advantage of his father. His father's naked. Ham sees it. Ham takes advantage of that. And so we have homosexuality here in this incident. And where does it begin? Is it Ham's fault? Well, Ham's responsible for his own actions. But it begins back up here with the alcohol. It begins with the wine. It begins with the drunkenness. It ends with the shameless uncovering of his nakedness, which his poor son sees. And he acts upon it. So Noah wakes up from his wine, knew what his younger son had done unto him, and it's good for him to be angry about this. He said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren." We get it. We understand that there's a problem and that Ham has done something horrible to his father. He rapes his father. But whose fault is it? Where does it begin? It begins with the alcohol. It begins with the drunkenness. It ends with, or it also begins with the nakedness of Noah. So is Ham culpable? Yes. Completely? No. Noah should have said something about himself as well, but he doesn't. He does, however, bless his other sons. And I will return right here. The curse of Ham, the blessing of the brothers. And he said, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant." So you notice that we have this as a repeat every time. Shem is mentioned here. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Just like we had back in chapter 5. And in chapter 6, we have this statement about the living, the sons that were born, and the dying, all a part of the curse that occurs to men. All right, well, I hope that this helps you with this chapter. I think the third generation of men is fascinating. I think the second generation of men is fascinating. But we're going to continue on. Next time we'll be in chapter 10. So join me then here on the Bible Bistro University.